Hello everybody, my name is Austin Hamp and this is my final report for our project management class. I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen to it. So for my project for this class, I used something called the Joint United States and Switzerland Project, JUSP. As you can see, this picture is whenever I began the project in the beginning of January. I'm sure throughout the semester you've read some of my posts and some of my descriptions of the project, and so now I'm going to go into more detail about what it implies. This is a brief introduction for the project. This is the third year that Robert Morris University has participated in JUSP. Each year, RMU sends 3 students to Switzerland to a university called St. Gallen. If you look at the map on the bottom right side of the slide, you will see St. Gallen is located in the northeastern portion of Switzerland. RMU students work alongside students from the university, known as FHS, in a business consulting role for a company that is based in Switzerland. This slide will speak about the purpose and proposal for the project. XYZ Company is the name that you will see a lot throughout this presentation. I had to change the name of the real company for confidentiality reasons, but for all other purposes, this company will be known as XYZ Company. They currently are based in Switzerland and would like to design and produce a product for the construction industry in the United States. Geographically, the United States is a large country with much need to improve its construction industry. Our infrastructure is declining, and there has been recent talkings of people wanting to improve our infrastructure, including bridges and tunnels, and this is a big market potential for this company. Hoping to minimize the total price while giving young people invaluable experience, XYZ Company would prefer to recruit students rather than hire a professional consulting firm for this project. For this project, XYZ Company has identified one key major criterion for labeling this project as a success. The launch of the product is expected to increase XYZ Company's revenue in the United States by 10% in the first year after launch and by 25% during the second year. If all things go according to plan, these years should be 2020 and 2021 respectively. There are 3 major deliverables for this project. The contractor is to present the following items to XYZ Company. The first is a market segmentation analysis. Whenever XYZ enters the market, it needs to know where to put its product. Before it can do this, it has to understand the current construction market. The consultants who are performing this market segmentation analysis need to get specific information about each of the potential markets, such as a construction company, engineering firms, Department of Transportation. This is the research that needs to happen. The next deliverable is regulatory guideline research. So are there certain standards and codes a company needs to follow and abide by when creating a product? Are there certain laws that are important? These are the types of things that XYZ Company needs to know before it goes through with making a product. And the last one is based on the 4 P's of marketing. So the consultants should provide recommendations based on the product, so how the product will fit into the market, about the price, so how much this should cost, the place, so where in the market should it be geographically or within the different segments, and promotion. How should the company promote and advertise the product? This is the schedule for the project. It is of utmost importance that the consultants adhere to this schedule. A baseline plan should be established by January 15th, 2019. This will keep the project in line. Completed customer segments by February 15th. Completed regulation research by March 15th. Completed the 4 P's of marketing by April 15th. The presentation on the major findings will occur on May 1st. The first prototype of the product should be unveiled September 1st. Completed product testing will be October 1st. So once the prototype is made, it has to be tested. Then the final product released publicly by November 1st. This is the goal for the project. This is the project quality plan. XYZ company currently views this project of market entry into the United States as a top priority. Since this is such an important project, it is of utmost importance that the contractor selected for this project strictly adheres to the quality control plan. This involves the milestones, so there is an expectation that the contractor will strictly abide by the schedule. Primary research should be done in a professional manner. This research will be with qualitative interviews. Confidentiality. So it is important that the contractor does not tell people in the United States specifically which company they're working for, as word of mouth would come out that this company is trying to make a new product. Competitors might try and steal the product. Secondary research should be done thoroughly. And then the presentation at the end of the project should be done in terms of font, in terms of grammar, in terms of a professional manner. This is the work breakdown structure for the project. It is broken down into 4 different levels, 0 through 3. Level 0 is XYZ company's market entry strategy. Level 1 is then broken down into 5 distinct phases: baseline plan, customer segments, regulation research, 4 P's of marketing, and then the presentation. Unfortunately, Microsoft Project does not allow you to list individuals for resources at these summary tasks because it would then assign too many hours. These individuals for this project, though, are acting more for the supervisor person. If there's a meeting, they would lead the meetings. So they should not be credited to having all these different hours. Level 2 and Level 3 then break down into different activities and tasks for each higher job. So for example, if you look at the baseline plan, and at Level 1, it's then broken down in Level 2 to trip to Switzerland, then the contractor meeting, and then Level 3, airfare, food, hotel, presentation, and then expectations. This similar trend can be analyzed and looked at for each of the other phases. We have now arrived at the responsibility assignment matrix. I first want to draw your attention to the right-hand side of this slide. Here you will see a picture of the team standing outside a church in the center of St. Gallen. From left to right, you see Julie, Katie, Friska, myself, Vanessa, and Thomas. Now, if you look at the left-hand side, you will see how the responsibilities are broken down. Inside this chart, you will see the different tasks that must occur, as well as the different people who will serve as resources. The P's are for primary responsibility, and the S's are for secondary responsibility. You could think of it kind of as a backup for the primary responsibility. Whenever you have a P, you can have as many S's supporting it. So for example, 5.1.2, the full team meeting, we have the primary person being Thomas, whereas the rest of the team has an S. This differs then, for example, 4.2.1 location, where Austin has a primary responsibility and then Katie has a secondary responsibility. It is vital that the people who are responsible for different tasks complete them on time and in a professional manner. This is the network diagram for the project. It shows a timeline of how the different tasks must occur. If you look at the very far left side, you will see the baseline plan. From this baseline plan up, you'll see the smaller tasks that make up the baseline plan. To the right of this are 2 arrows, one leading to customer segments and the other one leading to regulation research. Because there are 2 arrows here, this means that these 2 tasks happen at the same time. The 2 arrows converge to the 4 P's of marketing. This means that customer segments and regulation research precede the 4 P's of marketing. From the 4 P's of marketing, We then go to the final presentation at the far right-hand side of the slide. Here is the detailed project schedule. If you look at the first column, you'll see a list of all the different tasks that will happen over the course of the project. They are broken down into large categories, and then they're then further broken down into smaller ones. So, for example, if you look at number 2, customer segments, you'll see that 2.1 is under customer segments, and then we have 2.1.1 through 2.1.4, ending in the United States of America analysis. Each of the tasks follow this general outline. If you then look further to the right, you will see an overview of the whole project schedule. Arrows represent flows of activities, so different activities will precede and proceed other ones. At the very end of the project, we have presentation, which is number 5, that is broken down into 2 different components, speaking component and the PowerPoint presentation. The project will start in January and it will culminate at the beginning of April. This next slide represents the project schedule. I know it is difficult to see just because I had to lengthen the picture to fit everything on one slide. If you were to view the file of this project, everything would be much more clear. The project tasks follow a general outline, and you can see this outline through arrows. Certain ones precede other ones, and certain ones proceed other ones. I briefly mentioned this during the last slide. If you start at the very beginning, and then you follow the arrows all the way to the end, that will be the end of the project. There are also certain instances where tasks will happen at the same time. For example, 2 and 3 will happen at the same time. These are customer segments as well as regulation research. Certain activities can happen at the same time, whereas other ones must follow one another. If you are able to zoom in, you could then see which activities come in which order. This next slide is resources and resource usage. Each of the different resources that are used during this project are listed on the left-hand side of this slide. They are Thomas, Vanessa, Friska, Austin, Julie, and Katie. Each of these represent work in the form of labor. You can see their abbreviations. For example, Thomas is represented by T. You can also see the hourly rate of his labor, $16 an hour, and then the overtime rate, $24 an hour. Each of the labor is the same for all of the people involved on this project. You can also see different costs, such as the travel expense and the hotel cost. These prices could be added in later once they are known or estimated. There's also a material cost, interview microphone. This is something you could find on Amazon, for example, before you order it and add in the cost. For this project, it was estimated that this interview microphone would cost $100. We have now arrived at the costs and resource usage slide. This slide represents the cost of the different phases of the project. Based on the graph, you can see that each of the costs are labeled under remaining costs because at this point of view, the project has not started yet. You can see that also with the baseline cost. The baseline was established at the beginning of the project, and based on this timeline, the project has not started yet. If we look at phase 1, which is the establishment of the baseline plan, you'll see that this phase is estimated to cost $12,000. It costs more than the other phases because it involves a lot of travel expenses. Customer segments, regulation research, 4 P's of marketing, presentation get their primary costs through labor. Doing research, interviewing people, and designing a market entrance do not require much other than labor cost. That is why they are lower than the baseline plan. Once the project starts, you'll be able to compare the remaining costs to the actual cost and see how it differs by looking at the baseline. Here we have the estimated costs and cash flow. If you look at the graph, you will see the breakdown of costs per each week from each quarter of each year. This project spans quarter 1 and quarter 2 of 2019, and it's weeks 1 through 17. If you look at week 1 and week 2, they have the highest costs. They are around $5,000 and $6,500 respectively. The cost for each week decreases tremendously after this point. We touched on it in the last slide, but this is because the first 2 weeks involve a lot of travel, from Pittsburgh to Switzerland, and then from Switzerland to Pittsburgh is 2 flights. There is also a need for a hotel, which increases the price. By the end of the project, you will see that the cumulative cost is represented by the line, and that is around $20,000. This is the work overview of the project. It is broken down by people. People count as resources, and they get paid hourly rates. If you look at the first graph, you will see each person: Thomas, Vanessa, Friska, Austin, Julie, and Katie. The size of the bars above the names represent the amount of hours that each one respectively has to do. Julie and Katie have the highest bars, which means that they have the most amount of work. For specific numbers, you can look down below at the table. You will see that Julie and Katie both have 132.64 hours remaining of work. This is higher than the other people. The work is remaining at this point because the project still has not started according to Microsoft Project. As the work goes through, it will then be transferred to actual work. The baseline work represents the baseline for the amount of work that is estimated to happen over the course of the project. This is the estimated costs and cash flow part 1. It is the first part of 3 that we will look at. XYZ Company's market entry strategy here is broken down by the cost of each different task. So for example, if we look at the baseline plan, it's broken down into trip to Switzerland as well as the contractor meeting. We then have the resource names listed. So for example, Pittsburgh to Switzerland, Thomas is responsible for that. He'll spend 1 workday and 4 hours of that day. He gets paid $16 per hour for a total labor cost of $64. There's also travel costs listed for this activity. If we look at contractor meeting and then go to the XYZ company presentation, the resource names are listed as Vanessa, Thomas, Friska, Julie, Katie, and Austin. Combined, they each will do 100% of the work, but they'll be broken down. So for example, Vanessa will do 20% of the work. She'll work for 8 hours, and she'll make $128 in labor costs. Thomas will do 16%. He'll work 6.4 hours and make $102.40. It is possible to break down the overall tasks into different percentages to show how each person will be responsible for completing the task. This is part 2 of the estimated costs and cash flow. Here we'll see a similar outline to the previous slide. We see regulation research, 4 P's of marketing, and the presentation. Again, we see the resources, the days, the percentages, the hours, the labor wage rate, the total compensation, as well as the total cost. This is the last part, part 3 of the estimated costs and cash flow. Here again, we'll see the same outline that we've seen so far. The thing I want to point out here is the total cost. If you missed it from the first slide, you would have seen that the total cost is $19,876. This means that it's estimated that the project will cost this amount of money. It might change because the actual cost might be different as the project starts and new expenses arise. The goal, though, is to stay as close to budget as possible throughout the life cycle of the project. This is the last part of the project that I want to talk about. It is the identified risks. Here the risks are outlined in a matrix format. We have the risk, such as flight cancellation, the impact, so miss introduction to client. This would be missing the flight to Switzerland. The likelihood of occurrence is L for low, M would be medium, H would be high. The degree of impact is H here, so high. So if you miss the flight to Switzerland, that is detrimental to the project because you cannot have the introduction to the client. Those things are best that whenever they happen in person. The action on trigger means that what should you do to try and avoid this risk. So the action on trigger here is flight status check 1 day before. So if you were to check the status of the flight 1 day before, you could hopefully avoid this risk. The responsibility is who is going to be responsible for it. This would be Thomas. So 1 day before the flight, Thomas will check. And the response plan. So how are you going to handle the risk? How are you going to handle if you find out that it might happen? You're going to be ready to act on flight cancellation and reimbursement policies. So you could plan a new flight, or you will know how to seek reimbursement. Each of the risks here have potential impacts on the project, such as technology failure during presentation, participation in interviews is low, snowball sampling not effective, and so on. Ultimately, you will avoid each of the risks as the project begins. It should also be noted that you cannot accurately account for all risks. It's just impossible. You just want to try and highlight some of the risks that you think might happen. And then as new risks emerge, you could then add them to this matrix. So that is the end of my project. Thank you for listening to me and viewing my slides. I really appreciate all of the interactions I've had with everybody these past 8 weeks. I wish everybody good luck in their future endeavors. Bye.